Recently, I got a nice surprise. I discovered that my website is getting a lot of visitors from Russia and from various parts of Eastern Europe. So I thought I'd like to tell you why that is important to me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened in Plymouth when I was a younger man. A few decades ago, when Europe was still divided and many countries in Europe were controlled by communism, the Christians in Plymouth were praying and caring for their brothers and sisters in Eastern Europe. We heard that Russian Christians and Christians from various parts of Eastern Europe were experiencing difficulty getting Bibles. So ordinary Christians from Plymouth and all over the UK put their hand in their pocket to pay for them to be sent to Eastern Europe by the truckload. I was happy to support the Bible Society in their mission to put Bibles in the hands of the peoples of Eastern Europe. I remember that regular prayer meetings were held for the people of Eastern Europe in the Methodist Central Hall in Plymouth and in Mutley Baptist Church. These meetings were attended by Christians from the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church, the Church of England, and various other religious denominations. Sometimes they would organize all-night prayer meetings where Plymouth Christians would fast and pray for Christians and Jewish people who were facing difficulty from the communist authorities because of their faith. I remember many times praying that the Iron Curtain would fall, that the communist regimes would collapse, and that the people of Russia and the rest of Eastern Europe would be free. I could not stay all night, but there were those who would fast and pray throughout the night for the freedom of the people of Russia and of Eastern Europe. If you are watching from Eastern Europe, then you should know that they were fasting and praying for God to bless you. My generation grew up under the shadow of the mushroom cloud. There was in the back of our minds the fear that the Cold War might one day become a hot war, and that the doctrine of mutually assured destruction would come into play, and the bombs would be dropped, and we would all regret it. But none of this brought the Christians of Plymouth together to pray in the way that I saw them pray. What brought them together to fast and pray was a deep concern for the people of Eastern Europe. Now I know there were many people throughout Eastern Europe and all over the world working, suffering, and praying for their people to be free. And it is difficult for Western Christians to understand just what the people of Eastern Europe have had to deal with, and what these countries have had to suffer. But I want you to know that throughout that difficult period in your history, you were being prayed for. It was my hope during this time. It was one of my great hopes that one day it will be just as common to hear an Eastern European voice on the streets of Plymouth as it is to hear a Western European voice, somebody from Spain or somebody from France or Germany. I remember when communism finally collapsed. It was like a dream come true. There were many appeals for help during this time. I remember that some Pentecostal Christians parked up with a lorry in the Plymouth city centre and announced that they were driving to Eastern Europe with food and clothing for the needy. So the people of Plymouth, both practicing Christians and people with no particular religious inclination, went and bought groceries, clothes and blankets and loaded up that van. This was just one of many such events from that time. I also know of many ordinary Christians who volunteered to go and work in Eastern Europe to help out wherever they could. A few years after the collapse of communism, Plymouth was visited by a Christian music group from Eastern Europe called Ecclesiastes. They came to our church and I bought the music tape. I'm not sure if they really realized just how much their visit meant to some of the Christians in Plymouth. I also remember the visit of an East European Christian dance group who were part of a presentation at the College of Further Education. They put on a little show for us and told us a little bit about what was happening in Eastern Europe and what they hoped would happen shortly, and to pray for the mission and to pray for work that was going on at that time. I can remember explaining to them after the end of the show what the Christians of Plymouth had been doing and how they had been fasting and praying for them. And I remember how much it meant to them. I also remember asking them to take the word back that the Christians of Plymouth had been praying and caring for the people of Russia and of Eastern Europe. It all seems a long time ago now, but because of my past experience, there will always be a prayer in my heart that the people of Eastern Europe will be free to know and experience the love of God in Jesus Christ. I'm going to close this little remembrance of answered prayer by telling you something that I have said many times in many places, and it is this: every time I hear an Eastern European voice on the streets of Plymouth, I know that God answers prayer. May God bless the peoples of Russia and of all of Eastern Europe and bring them close. Bring you close to Him. Amen.